Okay, imagine this. The world's biggest problems being discussed, not in some, standard conference hall, but right near the highest point on Earth. Intriguing,
Uh,
right?
It really is. We're talking about the Sagarmatha Sambad today. That's this international dialogue forum started by the government of Nepal.
And that name, Sagarmatha, it's pretty powerful.
It is. It's the Nepali name for Mount Everest. And that's not accidental. It signals high-level thinking, a global viewpoint.
Inclusivity, like reaching for the summit of ideas, but bringing everyone along.
Exactly. It's meant to symbolize discussions that aim high, are truly global, and importantly, are open to more voices than you might typically hear.
So this is Nepal, a Himalayan nation, saying, hey, world, we got something important to add here. It's their specific approach to tackling these huge global challenges.
Yeah, and it's positioned quite deliberately, I think, as not just another conference. The whole idea, the vision, is to build a platform that's genuinely welcoming to, well, a wider range of people.
More than just the usual politicians and scientists.
Definitely. Going way beyond that.
Okay, so let's maybe pin that down for everyone listening.
Hmm.
What exactly is the Sagarmatha Sambad at its core?
Well, think of it as Nepal's big initiative, a forum they've created to host these high-level, serious talks on critical global issues.
And the Everest connection. It's more than just branding.
Oh, much more. It represents the ambition, the scale, trying to elevate the whole conversation, look at problems from like a 30,000-foot view, almost literally. It's Nepal actively getting involved in finding global solutions.
That makes sense, which brings up the why, doesn't it? Why did Nepal decide we need to do this? What's the driving force?
That's a really key question. Fundamentally, it came from recognizing that the really big challenges, the ones facing all of us, they just demand collective action and, frankly, new ways of thinking.
Like climate change, obviously.
Climate change is a huge one, yes. But also things like persistent inequality, the huge movements of people around the world, migration, and just the general geopolitical tensions we see.
But it wasn't just about um, making a list of problems, was it? It was about how to talk about them.
Absolutely right. The core goal was always about bringing together a really diverse group. So, yeah, politicians and scientists are there, but crucially, so are activists, young people with fresh perspectives, indigenous communities with deep knowledge.
Thinkers, entrepreneurs, too.
Exactly. Thinkers, entrepreneurs, people from all sorts of fields. A real mix.
And Nepal itself isn't just a neutral host, right? They bring their own unique experience to the table.
That's such an important point. Nepal's own history, its own lived reality deeply shapes this. They've dealt firsthand with major earthquakes. They see the effects of climate change dramatically in the Himalayas.
And political shifts, too.
And significant political transitions, yes. So they have this kind of practical wisdom, you could say. It's not abstract for them. It's very real, very grounded.
Okay, so the first actual Sambad was back in 2020. What topics did they tackle? What was on the agenda?
Right, the first one, 2020, the theme was very focused. Climate change, mountains, and the future of humanity.
Mountains playing a key role there, obviously.
Hugely important, because when you talk about the Himalayas, you're not just talking about peaks, you're talking about the source of water for, billions of people across Asia. They're literally water towers.
Billions, wow. So the impact is massive, far beyond Nepal.
Oh, absolutely massive. Think about it. The glaciers melting faster and faster. That affects drinking water, water for farming. It increases flood risks downstream. It changes whole ecosystems. It's huge.
So those first discussions must have been heavily focused on, what, sustainable solutions.
Very much so. Finding sustainable paths forward was key. But also, and this is interesting,
Yeah.
it wasn't just about the hard science, the data.
For gold.
There was a real emphasis on integrating indigenous knowledge, the wisdom passed down over generations living in those mountains. How do you combine that with modern science?
Finding that balance, development versus ecology.
Exactly that. How do you develop economically while respecting the environment, ensuring long-term sustainability? That was a major thread.
And looking ahead, any hints about future topics?
Well, things evolve, of course, but potential themes that have been floated include things like peace and conflict resolution, which is always relevant. Also, migration again, youth empowerment, big issues. Global health equity is another.
And technology's impact. That seems inevitable.
Right, the sort of societal shifts coming with new tech, all potentially on the table for future Sambeds.
Okay, so we've talked about the global picture, but let's zoom in on Nepal.
Mm-hmm.
Why is hosting this forum so important for Nepal specifically?
Yeah, that's crucial. It really connects to Nepal's identity. and its place in the world. It might be small geographically, but it's incredibly rich.
Rich in culture, biodiversity.
Both amazing cultural heritage, incredible biodiversity, and these like ancient knowledge systems that actually hold really valuable lessons potentially for everyone.
So the Sambad is a way for Nepal to amplify that, to step up as a leader.
Precisely. By initiating and hosting this, Nepal positions itself, I think, as a kind of moral voice, maybe an environmental leader on the world stage.
There was that tagline, wasn't there? Something about talking at the top.
Yeah, come, let's talk at the top. Let's rise above politics and problems and find common ground. It really captures that ambition, that invitation to a different kind of diplomacy.
And it's also presumably important for people within Nepal,
Hmm.
especially younger people.
Oh, absolutely vital. It gives young Nepalese a platform, a real chance to bring their energy, their ideas, their understanding of their own context,
And they're
and
valuable.
their values, exactly, into these major global conversations. It's about making sure the next generation isn't just listening, but actively shaping the future.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. The Sagarmatha Sambad, it's Nepal's really ambitious project for high-level but crucially inclusive global dialogue.
Right. Driven by this deep need to tackle shared global crises together.
By bringing all sorts of different people and perspectives to, symbolically at least, the roof of the world.
Yeah. And in doing so, it lets Nepal, despite its size, really step forward as a leader in thought, especially on huge issues like climate change, offering its unique perspective to the world.
Which kind of leads to a big question for you, listening to this. In this world we're in now, so interconnected, facing problems that just don't care about borders,
Mm.
how important is it really to make sure our global conversations are genuinely inclusive?
How vital is it to actively seek out those voices from beyond the usual corridors of power? It's
Yeah.
something worth thinking about.
Definitely something to chew on. And look, if this conversation has sparked something for you, if you want to engage more, there are ways you could maybe learn more about climate change impacts, especially in places like Nepal.
Or even just raising awareness, talking about it with people you know, sharing good information. That
But
has an effect.
yeah, or looking into organizations, maybe locally, that work on some of these global issues. That whole think globally, act locally idea,
Yeah.
it still holds true.
It really does. And ultimately, I think the spirit of Sagarmatha Sambad is a powerful reminder. It shows that even perhaps voices that aren't always the loudest,
Hmm.
when brought into the right kind of conversation, can make a real difference in tackling the biggest challenges we all face. It's quite an inspiring initiative from Nepal.
A reminder of the power of just talking, but talking inclusively,
Hmm.
to find a better way forward.